Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Down in the Country podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Reed, and today we are joined with Jimmy Snips, who's an up and coming country music artist. Thank you so much again for your time today, Jimmy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here. And how would you describe your style of songwriting, and where do you see it playing a role in the Nashville country music songwriting scene?
Uh, Man, I wouldn't necessarily say I have like a set style. Still trying to, I guess, figure out what works as far as like making this a career for me. I have I have friends that are kind of all over the spectrum when it comes to what genre they're in. So, my style, what I focus on, I guess, the most is like making sure the lyrics make sense. I try
Mhm.
to tell a story, even if it's not necessarily a storytelling song. But I don't know that I have a style necessarily that I stick to. I've got songs that are polar opposites from each other, and they're still songs that I like a lot and that I wrote, but their styles couldn't be any different. So uh, that's a tough one as far as style goes, but I do like to tell a story as much as possible.
So when you say like polar opposites, are you talking about like in relation to the story? Are you talking about like the themes can be totally different, the feelings that you want people when they listen to your songs are different, or like how would you kind of differentiate the differences between those?
Well, the feelings, no matter if it's like a drinking song or a sad song, really the only thing I'm going for is making it relatable to the listener. So I think that's what everybody tries to do. So I guess I don't know if that's a style, but I mean polar opposites, meaning like I've got some songs that like really focus on like the hook. The whole time it focuses on the hook or like the focal point of the song. And then other songs it's strictly just like telling a story that can be very broad, and the hook is just kind of an extra or an added piece to that story or something like that. I don't know if that answers your question as much as you want it to, but that's kind of how I interpret it. And by different, yeah, I just mean like the genre is way different. So that would open up a different style per se
Mhm.
to writing that song and how you get to the hook and things like that. But yeah, I don't know, I guess.
So and it's amazing to me when you um when you write a song, and even kind of what you're saying, even if there's different themes and different feelings, one of the things that always amazes me as a listener is that the right, like the lyrics always seem to kind of blend very well with the instrumentals and the vocals. Like you never really hear like one really overpowering the other. i've
Mhm.
i've said this on other podcast episodes before, and that that takes talent to make sure that everything is in marching orders.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of practice goes into it, and a lot of really terrible songs have led to some not so terrible songs nowadays. So it's kind of just throw something at the wall and see what sticks a lot of times. But I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah, you never, because yet again, you don't know what people like unless they hear it for the first time.
And we talked about it on the phone a couple weeks ago. Like that's the hardest part, is getting it in front of people that have never heard of my name or any of the artists that are cutting these songs that I wrote. That's the hardest part. Not
Hmm.
the writing of the song, not the production, not anything of that. It's the getting it to new ears, because if you look at it from a business standpoint, like that's like getting a new customer. Like the new customers are the hardest ones to get. So once you get them, oftentimes you keep them, at least you hope. But yeah, getting it into those new ears is definitely the challenge we're facing right now.
And it's like, it in the music space. If one person enjoys it, odds are that they're going to tell that other person, and then it
Right.
turns into, so it's really it's amazing to me with songs. It's really a digitalized version of word of mouth
Oh,
when it
definitely.
comes.
Social media makes that word of mouth way easier. I mean, everything is shareable so quickly, and everybody's on social media. Although I have a strong disdain for a lot of social media, it's very helpful as far as when you do get something that it seems to be relatable to people. It goes to a lot of people very quickly. So that is definitely a perk to all of that.
Hmm. No, definitely. And so, how would you say that you've changed as a songwriter from where you started until now?
Um, I was just talking to one of my buddies about this the other day, and um, I think what's changed, at least mentally, is I'm not trying to write the perfect song every time I go to write, because that's just putting like way too much pressure on myself, and oftentimes makes me overthink the most simple idea. So really all I try to do now is write a relatable song. Again, no matter what it's about, I try to make sure that somebody out there can relate to it. And honestly, like you just said, if one person can, odds are a lot of people can. But really, as long as one person can, I mean, it kind of did the job. And that, I mean, you look at some of the major artists, like no matter what Morgan Wallen puts out right now, it's going to be a hit and people are going to relate to it. So, and that's kind of going back on my point, is the people writing a lot of songs for Wallen or Luke Combs or anyone like that, like they're not trying to write the perfect song every single time. And as an unsigned writer, sure, I am trying to write the song that's going to get me a pub deal or get me on the map or anything like that. But I've taken a step back and then again made it a little bit easier on myself and just try to write a relatable song rather than the perfect song every time.
Mhm. And when you say relatable, kind of like based on your experiences?
Well, I mean, most of the things I write are off experiences, whether it's a feeling or an actual like action. But no, I just mean like, I mean, that's what, at least in my mind, what a lot of people truly enjoy about country music is whether it's a breakup song or your truck broke down song, I mean, the cliche country songs, like somebody out there is going to be like, wow, that exact same thing happened to me, or something very excuse me, something very similar happened. So that's what I mean about relatable, something that somebody can actually relate to, whether it's one line or the entire song or something like that. I just want to make sure that somebody's like, wow, that's exactly how I felt in that moment, or very close to how I felt, or something like that.
Hmm. And and it's just amazing to me because um, you know I've experienced this. When you listen to a song when you're younger versus like when you're a song now, it's like, oh wow, like I've had so much more experience, and I've lived a lot more life. And like prime example, one of the songs, and it's not, I listen to other things besides country, although country is my favorite. I will say, not to be biased there, but the song "Complicated" by Avril Lavigne.
Oh yeah.
I think we've
Oh,
all heard it.
I mean,
Yeah, which might be aging myself, but that song's at least 20 years old. Now
probably. I mean, is that post Skater Boy?
I think, yeah, it's like that 2002, 2003, 2004, like like that era.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but it's like, I remember when that song came out and I was like, oh, like I really like kind of kind of how everything kind of comes together into that song. And then now listening to it, it's like, oh, wow, you kind of have that holy shit moment where it's like, I've experienced this and I can relate to Avril. Like, have you ever had those experiences with songs?
Oh yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't know about that song in particular, but like that genre at least, like I don't know, like alt rock or punk alt rock, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. That genre is really cool. As to kind of what you were saying, like when we were younger listening to it, like I don't know, like 6 to 10 years old or whatever that was, if we were allowed to listen to it. You didn't really listen to the lyrics. It was just like a da, 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 you know what I mean? Like just the melody of it, like got you like bobbing your head and the lyric, like the melody lyrically was also just like super catchy. And then you go listen to it as like an adult and you're like, wow, the lyrics are actually what makes this song really cool. I mean, obviously everything else is cool, but like, I mean, I guess to answer your question in a simple way, like, yeah, I can remember like the song that made me want to write music. It was like the first song I completely like understood, like
Mm.
lyrically, and it was Austin by Blake Shelton. Like that's the coolest song ever. Like it's all like an answering machine, basically. Is like the entire song is like what this guy's hearing on the answering machine. And I was like, that's so cool. I want to do something like that. I want to make somebody feel that. Cause I mean, yeah, answering machines are outdated now, but like, I mean, a voicemail isn't, you know what I mean? Like that song was like what he left if it read to the answering machine. You know, it's like, if you're calling about the car, I sold it. If it's Tuesday night, I'm bowling. P.S. If this is Austin, I love you. I know I screwed that up, but like that's so cool. And that's, I guess, I honestly don't even remember your question completely, but like that song for sure, like made me realize like that was what I want to do. And like, I mean, that was when I was probably 10 or 12 years old. So there's definitely songs that made me feel a certain way that
Mm.
probably for the better. I don't know.
Yeah. And one of the songs I want to talk about is so your 2023 song "Running Back" gives us a melodic representation of who you are as a songwriter. Could you give us an introduction about the song and what it means to you?
Yeah, so there is a slight fib in the song. I did not play running back in high school. I played ice hockey, and it's pretty tough to write a country song about hockey. So, and although the song's not really about football,
Hmm.
it kind of has that double meaning. And that's really like the title of it being running back makes people think it's probably about football. But I mean, if you get to the hook, you obviously see that it's about you're always running back to this girl. So, I mean, as far as representation goes, I mean, everything else is very true to me lyrically. I'm happily married. I do have a girl that I'm always running back to. Um, I the first verse is like I keep a Glock 9 tucked in a case pocket knife with me. That's true. I did actually just buy a new truck, so I don't have any dents in the door quite yet, and hopefully no time soon. But I mean, the song is very true to me. I grew up in a college town on a dairy farm, so I mean that's like the peak of country music right there. Is drinking beer, watching college sports, and being on a farm. So I don't know. I guess for me, it's super easy to write songs that are true to me and reach the country crowd because that's exactly how I grew up. And that's what I try to kind of tell in Running Back, that being my first single. It is kind of like an introduction to me, as well as tried to be as catchy as possible and again relatable to others.
Awesome. And do you mind if we play a little clip?
Yeah, fired up, man. I can grill a mean steak while I drink my whiskey neat. I keep a Glock 9 tucked in a case pocket knife with me. I got a 4x4 with some dents in the door and a motor I built myself. And I don't own a pair of jeans without a story. In high school I was a running back. I broke a couple records. I'm rugged like John Wayne, tough like leather. You see what you get from the boots to the brim of my hat. And I've never been the type of guy that get tied down, but there's a pretty girl I'm wrapped around. And when I'm gone too long, she's home alone. I'm rushing to get there fast. She keeps me running.
So the first thing I want to say is I really like the cover art in the song.
Thank
I
you.
don't know who painted that, but they did a
Uh,
fantastic job.
it's actually AI.
Oh, it's AI?
Yeah, man. We plugged, dude. It took for like I knew what I drew. I mean, terrible drawing, but I drew basically that and we just kept trying to like plug the right words into AI to give us that. And it just kept giving us ones that looked like spooky and things like that. And I was like, that is not this song at all. I don't want it to be like nighttime. Like we were going to have it like running back to like a trailer to make it like more country and things like that. But finally we just landed on this one and we were like, that's perfect. And there's actually, for people that know me well, know that I have, my wife and I have 3 wiener dogs. And if you look really closely at the cover art,
Yeah.
one of the like birds that are in the sky, it's actually a wiener dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how, I mean, being a songwriter and that's what I'm chasing, I don't know how many songs I'm going to put out myself, but everyone I do, I'm going to try to put like a little Easter egg or something in that and like not tell anybody. But I mean, I eventually tell people, but I try to make it as hidden as possible. But then when you know it's there, it's like you'll never not see it.
Yeah. And were you, for this, we, because it looks like looking at the art for the for running back that the house is in kind of an open field. Were you envisioning kind of people thinking that like this song could be applicable to an open field and in relation to the setting and
Honestly, I didn't put a ton of thought into that. I thought when we finally landed on that one, it kind of just looked like an old farmhouse kind of to me, and it looks kind of similar to the house that's, I mean, not to a T, but similar enough to the house that sits on my family's dairy farm. So I just when I saw it, I was like, that's perfect. If I was going to draw it, it would, and if I could draw, it would look just like that. So no, I didn't put a ton of thought into the open field, but just the looking like an old farmhouse. I thought that was pretty country, and again, looking like the one that I've known my whole life.
yeah. Well, and listening to it, the first time I listened to it, are you and you mentioned Austin by Blake Shelton, as being that like that was the song that made you want to go into. Were you trying to kind of take inspiration from kind of Blake's style of songwriting, or just how he sings and apply it to running back? Like, were you kind of looking for that more traditional sound?
When we were writing it, it was never a thought that I was going to be the one to cut it.
Uh-huh.
It was just me and another writer who's also from Ohio. We have a lot of things in common, so it just kind of we just made it true to ourselves, and then again, hoping it would be relatable to someone else. And then it would always be a song that I played at rounds just because I liked it a lot. And again, I didn't play football, so it's not 100% true about me, but it is true to a sense. And people just always complimented it. And I mean, I was pretty new to town when we wrote that. So I had no way of like pitching it to anybody. So like I finally got to the point where I was like, the only way to guarantee that this song gets out and people can hear it is for me to do it myself. And I was like, what better way to finally put a song out than one that I like a lot, and one of the first ones I wrote when I moved to town. So I guess to answer your question, I don't know if we were necessarily looking for any inspiration. We are just trying to write a song that was true to us. And that's again, what I always try to do. It's not always the case. I mean, we write songs about like, I don't know, like, I'm drawing a blank right now. We write songs that aren't necessarily relatable to me, but I try to put myself in that mindset and try to make it relatable to somebody. So that's kind of where we draw inspiration, I should say.
Awesome. And how long did it take you to write Running Back?
I don't know, like to write it, probably just like a couple hours. We typically go back, like we'll make a work tape the night we write it, and then we'll like touch up some lines here and there. So I think we actually revisited it like the day after or something, just to like change a couple things to make it as good as possible. But as far as like sitting down and writing it, I think it was like 2 or 3 hours. And again, it was just me and my buddy Cody Garrett. Shout out.
Wow, it's relatively quick for a song.
Yeah, that's typically like 3 hours is typically like what we try to stick to. Now, some songs get written way quicker. Some songs aren't even close to done in 3 hours. But a lot of times, if we don't have it within 3 hours, we'll typically like pack up and revisit it the next day or something like that. When you sit on something for 3 hours, you're going to eventually just be burnt out on it and kind of probably not think of anything that you didn't think of before. You know what I mean? So usually, if we sit on something and come back the next day, we finish it in like 30 minutes.
Wow.
But yeah, 3 hours is typically where we try to stop. And again, some songs take like an hour or less. It really just depends on how it's flowing that day, what kind of people you have in the room, if you work well with them. A lot goes into it, but yeah, a couple hours is pretty common.
And within those hours, when you work with people, are there do you have the tendency to introduce themes or kind of introduce like lyric patterns that when someone sings it or when someone listens to it, they're like, oh, Jimmy Snips wrote this?
I mean, probably. It's probably like not even on purpose, you know. Again, I'm still trying to figure out the like your first question, the style that is going to like make this a career for me. So until and it's a lot. I mean, artists are the same way. Like artists have to find their sound before they're going to be like all over the radio. That's just very common. So I wouldn't even know that you'd be able to tell necessarily every song. Like that's immediately one of mine because I try to make sure that they're all different. Also, like I try to not rewrite the same song. But I think there's certain things that might make you think that it's one of mine, but I don't know what they would be quite yet. I try to again make sure it all makes sense. So if you hear a song that completely doesn't make sense, no matter how you look at it, there's probably a chance I didn't write it. But yeah, I don't know if that's the case for me quite yet.
Awesome. No, that's great. And because it's all discovery is really what it comes down
Right.
to.
And I
So,
mean, oftentimes I have two, maybe even three other people in the room, and sometimes like someone's just hitting on every cylinder that day. So a lot of times, like someone else will kind of lead it, and it'll be like, what should we say next? And then that's when someone else chimes in or something like that. So it's really hard to tell. Um, Songs don't get written all by one person a whole lot in this town. Now, I mean, there are some certain songs that's not the case, like Dirt Sheet by Cody Johnson. Josh Phillips wrote that all by himself, and which is freaking wild. But I mean, that's kind of why you move here, at least in my opinion. Like I could have wrote songs by myself in Athens, Ohio, and probably still been subpar at it. So I've learned a lot from the people I write with, and a lot of times that's what makes me want to write with them even more.
mhm.
And that's not saying I don't write by myself because it's good to like challenge yourself and do that too. But most of the better songs and a lot of the songs I'm proud of, there are other people in the room, so it's hard to like make that a Jimmy Snips song if that makes sense. It's a collaboration every time, so you get a little bit of ingredients from everybody to hopefully make a masterpiece.
Mhm. And since you moved from Ohio to Tennessee, have you noticed like you're just like and I understand you're still trying to figure out your style, but is it like have you noticed your skill level just improve dramatically?
Oh yeah, man. When I first moved down here, I mean, I'm not saying I know what I'm doing now, but I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was just every time I was trying to think of like the most clever hook. I mean, I kind of hinted at this earlier. Like, I was always trying to write that song where people were like, "Holy shit!" And that almost made every song like feel like a disappointment because I wasn't getting that yet. Now I have some now that I personally think someone could go like, "Wow, that's amazing," or "Holy shit." So yeah, I've definitely noticed my skill level get a lot better, and honestly, just it's just a little bit easier, like you do something enough. It's like anything else. You practice or you ride a bike every day, you're eventually going to get really good at riding a bike. So, I mean, I write as often as possible. I mean, I write like 3 or 4 times a week. Try not to write on the weekends because, again, I am married and I like to spend some time with my wife. But Monday through Friday, man, we're hard at it as much as possible, and it's definitely making, at least in my opinion, my songs way better. And again, they're becoming easier to write. I'm not always sitting there like, what should we do next? It's kind of just like, it comes to me a little bit easier, I guess. So that's probably the biggest difference is just how much harder it was 4 years ago when I moved here.
Yeah. And one of the things I've really learned just in writing in general is, regardless, don't worry about the grammar. That can always be corrected later. Just get the idea down on the piece of paper or on the Word doc, and see where that really leads you.
Well, yeah. And like I said before, with running back, and I mean, this happens with honestly, like every song that is going to go get cut, like before the person goes in to do, sometimes it's way earlier, but before the person goes in to do like final vocals on the song, like we will sit down and make sure that like every word is as good as possible. So the song, when we write a song, there is almost a guarantee that it is not going to stay exactly like that by the time it gets to the studio. And I think that's just good to sit on something and really put everyone's brain together and see how good you can make one that you clearly already liked the day you wrote it, which is why it's getting cut. So yeah, that's very normal.
Yeah. And and you've also touched upon this too earlier in the conversation. Sure, you grew up on a dairy farm in Athens, Ohio. And how is that upbringing shaped? And yet again, when I say style of writing, I understand, you're still trying to find kind of your voice and in your style, but how has that really shaped your writing up until this point and the stories that you tell in the songs that you've written?
Well, like I touched on before, I don't have to make a whole lot of stuff up, but I don't have to be like, what would sound country? Like, not like shitting on anyone that didn't grow up on a farm, because you can still be country and not grow up on a farm. But like for me, like I personally don't think it gets much more country than the way I grew up. Again, being in a college town on a family-run dairy farm. I mean, that's country as gravy as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, when it comes to writing a country song, I mean, that's what shapes it, I guess. Like, it doesn't take me long to think like what is country, because that's just how I was raised. But I will say, I think what I've noticed, at least just in my work ethic in general, is I don't think there's any harder workers than dairy farmers in particular, because that's 365 days a year. Farming in general, no matter what you're doing, is hard work, but dairy farming, there are no days off. And I've seen my dad do that my entire life for 30 years, and he's been doing it since he was 13, and he's like 58 now. So to see what real hard work is, and then see like there's 3 of us sitting in a room with some guitars trying to write a song, like this is kind of the life, you know what I mean? So I think I just appreciate what real hard work is, and what I'm doing, I would not even think that's even close to that. I mean, I work very hard at it, but it's an easy job that I'm kind of doing right now. So I'm very appreciative. I think that's what the dairy farming has done the most for me, at least.
Wow. So that's amazing about your dad. He's been doing that since you said he was 13, and he's close.
Well, so I mean, he's been doing it since he could walk, but that's how long he's been like milking every day since he was 13. So, I mean, give or take, like if he's sick as a dog, you know what I mean? But that rarely happens. So yeah, for, I don't know, 45 years roughly.
Mm-hmm. And how big is a dairy farm, like acreage wise?
Well, ours in total is somewhere between like 11 and 1,200 acres. Now
Mhm.
there's like massive ones that are like complete like corporate dairy farm. But as far as like family farm goes, I feel like we have a pretty big one. Now you can have a dairy farm and have a much smaller. Now,
Mhm.
like because a lot of like I mean, we also, and I say we as in my family. I don't have a mouse in my pocket, but when I am there, I try to help as much as possible. But like we have enough land where we also like sell some of the hay and things like that too. Whereas some dairy farms, like smaller ones, they strictly just bale or plant what they need to feed their stock. So yeah, I guess there's not a set number of how big a dairy farm is, but ours is 11 to 1,200 acres. I don't really know how many head they're milking right now, but yeah.
11 to 12. That's massive.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty big, pretty good size, and that's the one thing, or not the one, but one thing I miss a ton is like no matter what I wanted to do when I was in Athens, I could go do it. Like I could go shoot rifles or guns or ride four wheelers or do whatever, and I don't have to worry about trespassing or anything. Like we just had the space to do that, and now I live in a house that's on like a quarter acre. My neighbor is literally 12 feet next to me. Uh, that won't always be the case, but for right now, I mean, I live in like a very tight neighborhood. And I don't love it, but we have a great house. It's just the neighborhood's not what I'm used to. So
And moving from Athens to Nashville, was that kind of an adjustment? Just kind of getting used to everything being closer together and
yeah, definitely an adjustment. I will say I moved. She was my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. We moved together as soon as she graduated college, which was May of 2020.
Mhm.
Um, also, COVID. So we moved in a very interesting time. Nothing was open. I mean, we couldn't even like we weren't even allowed to do like a walkthrough of the apartment we signed for before we signed for it for some odd reason. We couldn't walk through it by ourselves. Whatever. But yeah, it was definitely an adjustment. But it's and I still adjust to some things. I mean, I'll never adjust to this traffic. It's always going to suck. But just everything, kind of like you said, like everything that I could ever want to do or need to do comes to me. Whereas before, like Columbus was the closest major city to where I was from, and that was like an hour and 15 minutes away. So any concert I wanted to go to, if I wanted to go to the mall, I had to drive over an hour. So I mean, that's what's super cool. Obviously, that's not an adjustment; that's just a convenience factor. But yeah, the adjustment of just moving to a big city, not being from one, was interesting. But again, it was during COVID, so I kind of didn't even really get to like experience the city until I'd been here for a few months. So I don't know if that made it easier or harder, but it was definitely a learning experience that I think we did all right at. But being in the heat of COVID was definitely an extra wrench thrown in there.
Yeah. Now, you know, you being in Nashville, is there like one activity or one place to eat or one place to go to, one bar that you're like, if you visit Nashville, you have to do this or eat here or drink here?
Yeah, well, there's a couple. So probably not. I love going to bars. Don't get me wrong.
Uh huh.
Um, but I'm probably not going to suggest any bar. They're pretty much all the same here. I mean, especially on Broadway, like every bar is the same. But there are two places. One's a restaurant. I guess the other one's service food, but it's an experience that someone coming here should definitely go do. I'll start with my favorite restaurant, and it's a barbecue place. It's called the Peg Leg Porker, and it's in the Gulch, which is downtown. And it was on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives with Guy Fieri, and it's just the best barbecue I've ever had. Everything about it is great. The sides are all great, and that's really what separates it from other barbecue places around here. Because like Nashville barbecue is good just about everywhere, but a lot of these places, their sides just don't match up to the sandwich. So it's kind
Yeah.
of that's what I like the most about Peg Leg Porker. And what's really cool is like the owner actually has like a peg leg, so he's missing a leg. He's a veteran, and I don't know. I guess I don't know for sure he lost his leg in the military, but I assume. But it's just cool that that's the name of it. And the dude's every time I've been there, he's there, and he walks well for having a peg leg, but you can definitely tell that he's missing a leg, and that's just cool that he named it. He embraced it. You know what I mean? I think that's cool as hell. And then an experience that you definitely need to do if you come here. There's a place called the Listening Room, and it's not free. You got to pay. Tickets are like anywhere from like, I don't know, I think like $10 to $30 max. Usually they're like $15. Um, and a lot of times, typically once or twice a week, you'll have some of the like biggest hit songwriters of all time playing there. And they focus on like making sure like everybody's quiet and really listening. Whereas if you go to a writer's round at a bar, it's a bar that people are playing original music at. So like it gets very loud. You don't always get to hear these people, but I just went to the Listening Room just last Thursday, actually, right before I went to Whiskey Jam that we were talking about before. And Chris Tompkins was playing, and he wrote Before He Cheats. He wrote Lies, 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 some Florida Georgia Line songs. Josh Phillips was there, who I already mentioned, wrote Dirt Cheap by Cody Johnson. So like you go there, and I mean, obviously, at least for me, I'll be like, I know that name, like I know they have hits. But going in there, I had no idea that Chris Tompkins wrote Before He Cheats. So when he played that last, I was like, holy shit! That is the Carrie Underwood song, if you ask me. Like that is what put her really on the map. She was already on it, but it's just wild to like finally see some faces behind the biggest songs ever. And if you ask me, like that's what people should visit Nashville for, not to go to Broadway and do what you can do in any major city. You should really try to experience like the music in Music City and not just the crazy bars.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I really like about Spotify, and they've done a great job. I mean, updating it from what I remember when I first started using it is like when you go down to songs, when you listen to something, it literally shows you like who also contributed to the song too as well. And that's really nice and really helpful because it's, kind of what you're saying. It's not just one person the majority of the time who makes a song. It's like, oh, well, you have a producer, you have another writer, you have this person and that person. And it's, it's easier for them, although not perfect, it's easier for them to get their story out and for them to be part of the greater conversation when it comes to this particular song.
Yeah, sure. Spotify doesn't pay songwriters worth a damn, but yes, it is very easy to to find who wrote the song and who produced it and things like that, like under song credits. That is definitely a perk to Spotify. And I don't know, I don't have Apple Music, so I guess I can't say what I don't know, but I don't know if it's as easy to find on Apple Music as it is Spotify. But yeah.
But no, it's and kind of, and that's the amazing thing about songwriters is like you can be walking down the street and be like, oh, I had no idea kind of what you were saying. Like I had no idea that that person wrote this famous song that I listened to, or it's crazy to see kind of who can be behind them, who can be behind the curtain sometimes.
I love it, man. That is my favorite thing. Like my dream as a songwriter, I guess I have two, but they're pretty similar. Like I would love to like my top dream is like to walk into a karaoke bar and someone is singing a song that I wrote and I don't tell them, like they have no idea. I just stand there and watch. Like I think that is like the peak of the mountain for me. But I'd also be pretty happy with like walking through Walmart and like a song that I wrote is like playing in the speakers and like someone is like kind of mumbling, singing it. That'd be really cool. I would never tell anybody that was me. Like, I mean, that's a big reason. And I also am not like the greatest singer in the world. But like a big reason that I want to be just a songwriter is like, I would never, ever, ever want to have like the fame that Morgan Wallen has. Like, I want to be able to go to Kroger if I need like a gallon of milk or something. You know what I mean? Like that just sounds miserable to me. So I'd much rather be able to like write number one songs and nobody have any idea that that's me.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I'm the same way. You know, I would rather be on top of the Batman Tower in Nashville smoking a cigar. That's
Yeah.
me. Very peaceful, albeit ambitious.
That'd be great.
So any predictions on the Cleveland Browns this year?
I think we're going to be all right. We play a pretty tough schedule. Our division's really tough. But Deshaun's getting a lot of hate on his play because of the off the field stuff, and I don't know. I think that's pretty wild. I think he played pretty good the other night against the Jaguars, and without him, we probably wouldn't have won. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think we'll make the playoffs. I won't say much farther than that. It's just really hard to tell. I mean, dude, in this day and age, I was just talking to my wife about this. Like every single game, somebody gets hurt. Every single game. So you never like. I mean, barring any major injury, I think we have a very good shot at going to the playoffs, winning a game, maybe two. That might be a stretch, but I mean, you never know who's going to get hurt, and that could just like tear the season apart. But I don't know. We'll be all right. We're fun to watch. I'm old enough to remember getting to see one win in two entire seasons put together. So as long as we're competing, I'm happy. And as long as we're winning the games we should win, I'm happy.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I definitely agree. I don't remember growing up as a kid, players getting hurt so often.
I don't either, man. I don't know, like we talked about it, my wife and I, for a long time. Like, dude, every game, like, and you look, like, it's like not just like every Browns game. It's like every single NFL game. There's like one or two starting players getting at least hurt and out for a few games. Like, not everyone's out for the season, but like a lot of them are. I mean, the Browns last year, we lost Nick Chubb in like the second or third game of the season. He's still not back yet. Deshaun had a shoulder injury that required surgery. He was out for the year. Both of our starting tackles hurt and out for the year. Like, those are all like major contributing positions that were all getting hurt, and it's just wild. You never know, and it's actually, especially with like the Tua thing that's going on, man. Like, obviously they get paid a ton of money, but I don't know if it's worth that at all. Like, Tua is like seriously messing with the rest of his life. Like, a knee injury will heal. Like, you might walk with a limp when you're 50. But like the stuff Tua is going through, and like obviously it's different. Like, if you made it that far, like it'd be hard to give it up. You know what I mean? Like, you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, but like I can't believe that there's anyone in his family not like nearly forcing him to retire. That's very wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw on my iPhone, I got kind of like the NFL news on like the pop-up notifications, and they said like he's going to be missing like 4 games. I mean, like 4 games, that could be like, it's basically like a quarter of the season right there.
Yeah, well, so yeah, they put him. I just heard that on the way home. They put him on the IR today, which is it's a minimum of 4 games that he's out. But like, dude, and I know there's a lot of money that goes into it if he like retires, that he'd miss out on a bunch of money. But you can't tell me Tua wouldn't get like hired as like an ESPN analyst immediately. Like, the dude would be fine.
Yeah.
I can't believe that he's considering playing again, because I mean, that hit that he took was a pretty soft hit as far as like NFL hits go, and he had the clenched up fists and everything. Like, I mean, that was a bad concussion off of pretty easy.
Well, and yeah, like yet again, when I was younger, and I'm assuming when you were young, like, you might have heard like when they were talking about quarterbacks, they might have used the word concussion maybe once or twice in a season, but you didn't hear it kind of what you've alluded to, like every single game.
Yeah. Well, and that it could be. Well, no, I mean, it definitely is. It wasn't that they weren't getting concussions. I think they just like if the player didn't say anything, it was kind of like swept under the rug. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I don't remember the knee injuries and stuff as much as it is now. But again, that could just be because I was younger and didn't really
Mm-hmm.
pay as close of attention. But it's wild, man.
Yeah. There were two instances I remember when they like really kind of elevated the quarterback roles. One of them is I don't know if you remember, but like when Trent Green, when he was the quarterback of the Chiefs, slid, and then I forgot who the defensive player was, basically came on top of him and hit him, and like his head went like back, which now that was basically now the reason when a quarterback slides, you can't hit them.
Right.
And then Tom Brady, and it was the only season that I can recall that he was sat out the entire season. I think it was that 08-09 or 07-08 season where he got hit the first game and he blew out his knee, and basically then the quarterback can't, you can't hit the quarterback below the knee now. So those were the two like quarterback injuries that I remember. Like they definitely, elevated the rules after those two instances.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with like not hitting a quarterback below the knees or like driving his head through the ground when he's already slid. I'm all for those. But like, dude, some of the times like they call a penalty on roughing the passer because a dude like legit ran into him a millisecond after he threw the ball, and I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
If there's no chance of that guy getting injured right there, let's move along like he's still a football player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what they signed up to do. That's why they get paid a ton of money. Like they're still a football player who's allowed to get hit. So that's the only thing that I hate about that roughing the passer rule is like how quick they are to call it sometimes, or how sometimes they don't call it when some dude got killed. It's a judgment call. I hate any penalty that's a judgment call.
Yeah. Well, and there's like, looking at all the defensive players I remember growing up with, like Rodney Harrison, being a big Cowboys fan, like Roy Williams, how he used to hit people with his head. Even I would even put Ray Lewis in that category. Like you basically can't play the way that they played when they were in the NFL.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that we were quite a bit younger with all those players, but it seems like that was like the peak of the NFL. Like everybody was watching because they were like hard hits, and I mean, honestly, that's what a lot of people got into it for. Like it's the same with hockey. Like people love going to hockey games, and they couldn't tell you the difference between like a blue line and a clothesline. You know what I mean? I took that from the movie Miracle, so don't quote me on that. But they love like the hard hits and the fast pace and things like that. Like that's what people like about sports is like anything could happen at any given second. And it sucks that they're taking that away. I get that they're doing it for like safety reasons, but like that hip drop tackle thing that they're supposed to be like taking out of the NFL this year. I don't think they've called it once yet, but like it's going to be like week 6 and they're just going to all of a sudden start calling it, and it's going to fuck somebody out of a win. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And it's the same thing of like, the rule about it being a catchable ball. And if it's like a catchable ball, you can hit the receiver. And if it's not a catchable ball, you can't. And it's like, the funny thing is that when I watch football games, what one ref thinks is catchable is totally different than like what another ref.
Well, that's a huge judgment call. But like it also depends on like what angle you had. Like if you're directly behind the guy, you might not really notice that went 20 yards past him. You know what I mean? But like if you're to the side, you can tell it was clearly uncatchable. But like refs never like disagree with each other, at least publicly. So it's like whoever has the bigger dick in that argument gets the call. And
I'm still mad about the Dez Bryant catch against the Packers a couple of years ago. What was that, like 5-6 years ago now, when like he caught it and like his
oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That was probably like that had been like 7 or 8 years ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to not date myself too much, Jimmy.
Oh no, I know, but I didn't well, COVID was 4 years ago. That's how I'm kind of playing things. Like it was well before COVID. So it's got to
Yeah.
be like 8 years ago. It just time flies, dude. It really does.
No, it sure does. And last question, you know, going back to the music. So, do you have any new singles, any songs, albums, projects that you're currently working on and want people to know more about?
Yeah, so none that I'm putting out, but there's a good handful of stuff that I wrote on that's coming out pretty quickly. I'll start with Cole Bradford's got a song coming out called "Comeback Country." I can't remember the date. It's coming out. I'll tell you 1 second. It's coming out on the 27th, so in like 9 days. Then I've got a Liam Coleman cut called "Hate You're Happy" coming out sometime soon. I don't know if I have an exact date. He originally said late September, but we're kind of creeping up on late September. I still haven't heard a date, so I don't know when that's coming out. What else? I've got a Jake Slay cut coming out called "Even Though It's Raining." Super cool song. It's kind of like alt rock as well. So going back to your little Avril Lavigne rant earlier, you might really like that one. So I'll definitely share that with you whenever I get dates on these. I got another one called Trailer Trashed. We were just in the studio with Chris Chapman Monday. So it'll obviously take some time before that's out, but it's in the works. What else here? I'm probably going to forget some, and I hate that. But one more I'll tell you. My buddy Kevin Moon, he actually just moved up here from Georgia like this past weekend. So he's very new to town, but he's got a song coming out sometime soon. He's in the studio working on it right now called High and Dry. So I was a writer on all those, super pumped. There's some other ones much later in the year, like Cole Bradford's also going to have one called If Looks Could Kill. But obviously he's working on promoting Comeback Country and stuff now. But If Looks Could Kill will be like much later. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming out by the end of the year that I'm super happy about. It's nice to obviously have people trust and believe in the stuff that you wrote. And I mean, a lot of them were writers on these songs also. So it's not just believing in me, but it's nice to see the stuff that we spent a handful of hours on, like getting to live and get put out and things like that. So I'm very happy and very proud of all of those and all the ones I already have and things like that. But yeah, just mainly singles right now for all those artists. It's expensive, so I don't know about until someone signs a record deal. I don't know how soon any like albums or EPs or anything will come out, but you never know. I mean, if someone starts getting some traction, even on like TikTok or something, that could definitely help put some more music out. But for the most part, just singles for all of them. That, again, super pumped and proud about.
And do you, Jimmy, do you have like a list on? I've seen like other songwriters do it. They have like a songwriter playlist that.
Yeah, I do. There's like, I don't know, there's probably like only 6 songs on it right now. There's a Spotify playlist called Snips Cuts,
Mhm.
and I don't know how easy it is to find. If you search that, it should come up. But yeah, that's a playlist. I was a writer on all of those songs. Um, and then obviously I'll be adding every song that comes out um, to that as well. But should be around like 12 or more by the end of the year. So it'll be more of a playlist and not 5 or 6 songs soon. But yeah, I've got that. Again, I don't have Apple Music, so I don't really have a way to create a playlist on that, I don't think, unless I just don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, Spotify's got one. And then I think a lot of times, if you just like go to my like profile on Spotify, if you scroll down and go to like Jimmy Snips Radio, a lot of times it'll put like songs that I wrote or songs by artists that I wrote for and things like that. So that's a cool way to just kind of like
Mhm.
listen to my circle, which is a very important thing to have when you move to town, is that friendship slash writers circle that you bounce a lot of ideas and things off of with each other. But yeah.
Awesome. And besides Spotify, is there any other place that people can learn more about you as well as your music?
Yeah, I mean, I have all socials. I think Instagram and Twitter are Jimmy Snips 4, so like the number 4 after Jimmy Snips. and I'm pretty sure TikTok is Jimmy Snips Songs.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really use Facebook. Maybe I should, but for the most part, my Facebook is just to like keep up with what's going on back home. So probably not going to get a whole lot of music stuff out of that, but I'm on everything. I'm not very good at it, but I try to keep things updated. I do a lot of stories. So like when people share stuff and tag me in it, I'll like repost on my story, but I don't make a ton of posts. Maybe I should, maybe I will. I don't know.
Awesome. No, that's um, look forward to your look forward to following your journey as a songwriter. And be sure to subscribe to Down in the Country YouTube channel, where you can find the video version of this podcast, as well as listen to the audio version of this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Jimmy, thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
And this is